Okay, about 2 hours ago in Vishakhapatnam, India level the series. It stands at 1-1 now, and there's a bit of a break before the next Test match in Rajkot. I think that's February the 15th. England's players will go to Abu Dhabi now for a week of golf and R&R. So on the Sky Cricket podcast, we're going to review the second Test match, look forward a bit to the third. Nas, good afternoon or good morning in Chelmsford. What have you made of it?
Well, I loved every minute of it, to be honest. What a fabulous Test match coming on the back of that Hyderabad heist, as it's now being called, which was unbelievable. The last thing we needed was a dull Test match. It was far from that. And I think the pitch has a lot to do with it. I thought it was a brilliant cricket pitch. And when you have a surface like that, it produces skill and it highlights skill. And that's what we got. The skill of Jaiswal's bat, the skill of Shubman Gill, Zak Crawley with the bat. Or with the ball, Jimmy Anderson, 41 years of age, coming in and bowling the way he did. Or Jasprit Bumrah, touched with genius. Absolutely, that spell in England's first innings was about as good as it gets. And he was the difference in the end, for me, between the two sides. But it was a fabulous test. Did you enjoy it, Af?
I did. It's been a pleasant week in Vishakhapatnam. I'm afraid the submarine gag didn't go down too well. Obviously, the submarine was a bit more buoyant than I thought. India coming back to level the series. I thought it was a great Test match, actually. The crowds were really good for the 4 days. Obviously, it staged pretty much over the weekend. But even today, excellent crowds. It was a sellout yesterday. Good pitch, as you say, that offered a fair balance between bat and ball. Wasn't toss dependent. Thought the pitch stayed pretty true throughout the 4 days. Was as good really on the fourth day as it had been on the first. Not much difference. And all the individual moments of brilliance that you talked about. And one thing that you didn't kind of pitch on was the fielding of both sides, which some unbelievable catching and pieces of individual brilliance in the field. Today we saw a fantastic run out from Shreyas Iyer. Stokes was a bit late in setting off and uncharacteristically lazy actually in his running, but it was still a brilliant bit of fielding from Shreyas Iyer. Great catch from Rohit Sharma at slip. We saw an unbelievable catch from Stokes at long off. Brilliant wicket keeping from both Folkes and Bharat actually, with some great catches, low catches from Folkes. So I thought the out cricket from both teams was spectacular actually. So the general standard of cricket high, good Test match, and 1-1 sets it up beautifully for the rest of the series. I don't think, well, it remains to be seen. I don't think England will kind of go down as meekly as they did here in 2021 when they won the first Test and then it all turned around. Remains to be seen. But I kind of feel that they've landed enough blows in the first two Tests that they can go into this break now and look forward to the rest of the series with a little bit of confidence.
You're not allowed any more predictions because your exact quote was India's hopes sinking like a submarine in the Vizag Submarine Museum. I was expecting Rohit Sharma to show his guns in the presentation to Harsha Bhogle and spout something like Mike Atherton talk nart or something. What do you think India did better to lift their submarine hopes?
Well, I suppose, the first innings, England won in Hyderabad, didn't they? They overturned a deficit of 190, but that doesn't happen very often. Lightning doesn't strike twice that frequently, and then particularly if you're giving away a massive deficit and you're batting last in India. So the game really was shaped on first innings here. So I'd pick out two performances, and we can talk a little bit in depth about them. Yashasvi Jaiswal, that brilliant double 100, and Jasprit Bumrah with 6 wickets in the first innings. He got 9 in the match and the man of the match, as you say. But I think those two individual performances were absolutely key. Should we start with Jaiswal? It's a great rags to riches story, isn't it? It's the kind of story that Indian cricket throws up from time to time. A young kid who took his chances, moving from the family home to take his chance in Mumbai, living in a tent by the Azad Maidan for a little bit and selling street food to make ends meet, whilst he was all the time trying to, give enough time to practice his cricket on the way to becoming a great cricketer. So it's a real rags to riches story, which is not a new story because obviously we've seen him in IPL previous seasons and the story's been well told. But this will be the first time that English supporters have seen him really at any length in the middle. And boy, did he play some shots. I mean, tell you what is interesting. I was chatting to some of the English journos I'm in the Gateway, they're in the Novotel over the road, and that's where the Indian team are staying. And they were having dinner in the restaurant the other night, and Jaiswal was there, and they were saying how startled they were by his build. You know, the strength. He looks. They said he looks like a middleweight boxer, and he looks a really strong hitter of the ball. Some of the sixes that he hit were very, very powerfully struck. So, that combination of the drive and desire to make himself into a great cricketer, but also that kind of ability to take the game on in the T20 style, which all the young players have now. I thought that was a stunning innings.
Yeah, I think that's where he got the balance of that innings spot on. He's a product of where he was brought up and those Maidans, as with Tendulkar and all the other greats, where you bat and you bat long and you bat for your life and you never give your wicket away. That was the old school India, the Sunil Gavaskar, Sachin Tendulkar. But on the back of IPL and watching the modern cricket that he would have seen growing up, he's got that counter-attacking style as well. And I think that's what he got spot on. He got the balance between defence. On that first morning, he realised how good a pitch it was. That first hour, there was that knowledge. Skipper, let's be honest, that was a soft dismissal from Rohit Sharma, having won the toss on that surface to just poke it round the corner to that sort of solitary leg slip. He didn't make that mistake. He realised it was a belter of a pitch, but he wasn't just going to go into his bunker. When he needed to, he put the spinners in particular under immense pressure. Is hitting through the offside, whether it be with the spin, against the spin, his free-flowing, bat arc was magnificent. He is going to be they found one. That's all I can sum it up. India have found another one. And what that does, I think it sort of reverberates through the team. It was no surprise to me, second innings, Shubman Gill comes out and gets 100. He sees someone come in, a young player. He sees who has to come back into the side in KL Rahul, possibly Virat Kohli. But I always felt when Graham Gooch or Robin Smith was getting runs, it was like, or Alan Lamb, it was like, well, they're legends of the game. When Mike Atherton or Graham Thorpe or one of my peers growing up was getting runs, that made me even more hungry for runs. So I think Jaiswal's innings was magnificent for him, but it also sent a message to the team, because I think actually India in both innings, I don't know if you feel this, we know Rahul Dravid well. I think Rahul would have been sitting there and actually said, you know what, we could have put this game to bed a lot earlier. That's 3 innings out of 4. I don't think they've been as ruthless as they could have been, India. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's the strongest Indian batting lineup that I've seen. The team that played in this game, obviously there's Kohli and KL Rahul waiting in the wings there, and others like Rishabh Pant and Shami can come back obviously with the ball. So they're missing some key players. But you feel that if England do get runs on the board, there's just enough opportunities there in that India batting lineup to create some weaknesses. I mean, you mentioned Shubman Gill, who got 100 in the second innings, obviously. Just shows you, though, what a fine line it is in the game. He was given out to Tom Hartley on 4, and he reviewed it in the end. He was persuaded by, I can't remember who was at the other end with him at that point, but he was persuaded, it might have been Shreyas Iyer, I think, to review. He had no idea that he'd hit that ball, because you could see from his reaction afterwards, the huge smile on his face, and just the faintest of tickles, that he got away with that one. I didn't get away with it, but got through that one. And then the LBW call off Anderson when he was on 4 again, replays showing the ball shaving the stumps, millimeters lower. He's probably gone. Has a big impact on the game and a big impact on his career, because he was under a bit of pressure and needed some runs. So, we can all look back in our careers at moments where suddenly a little bit of luck or a bit of good fortune goes your way, and then
Me gloving Gavigal Srinath down the leg side at Edgbaston. Very faint glove it was.
we can all think of them, can't we? Those moments. You never forget that in the end, you kind of think that class will out and the best players will have a career. But I always think with luck, when you get your bits of good fortune is so important. And I don't know how much pressure Shubman Gill was under for his place in the side, but you could easily see if Kohli comes back, if KL Rahul comes back, and he fails in that second innings, he might be out of the side. And in India, once you're out of the side, it's very hard to get back in because of the strength in depth, because of the just number of brilliant players here. So if you get a little bit of good fortune just at the right time, it can have an incredible effect on your career, really. What about Jasprit Bumrah then? Six wickets first innings, 9 in the match, player of the match. Have you seen a more unorthodox fast bowler in all your days watching the game?
No, I guess someone like Lasith Malinga with that slingy action, he would have been a nightmare to face. I did face him once. He hit me on the foot in a warm-up game in Sri Lanka. First ball got me out. So I faced him for one ball. The one I struggled with was Courtney Walsh with the angles. Cricket, a lot of the game is about angles. And Courtney used to create that angle. He used to lean away and the ball you think is coming in and then it would nip away. And Bumrah has a bit of that, but also because of the braced front leg and the straight elbow, he releases it like a foot closer. And the stuttery run up, it's a nightmare. It's coming at 90 plus mile an hour. It's going to reverse. You don't know which way it's going. You're thinking, when shall I move? When shall I get my triggers in? And he's stuttering his way into you. It must be a complete and utter nightmare. And it's proving to be a nightmare for Joe Root. I think he's got Joe out 8 times now. And it's the most he's got any player out is Joe Root. And that's a great scalp to have. And Joe is struggling with the angle and the reverse swing. I was watching those 8 dismissals yesterday on Twitter. And literally, I think maybe 5-3, but it's 4-4 in and 4 out. It was like LB, LB. And then he's looking for the LB and it swings away or nips away and he nicks it to the keeper or slip. And you could see that in the first innings here. Having been out LB, in Hyderabad, he was waiting for it to come back in. Jasprit knew that, held it the other way around, and you just follow it because of the angle. So it is a nightmare. I mean, that's technically. What about psychologically, Af? When a bowler does have your number, I mean, famously, McGrath was all over you like a rash. Does it become psychological as well as technical?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Bumrah, just to start on the difficulties of facing him, first of all, I think that rhythm is key, as you say. A kind of stuttering run up, and then suddenly it's like a thunderbolt at 90 miles an hour. So if you're a person like Root who has, he has kind of pre-movement, some batters like Zak Crawley, for example, stands very still. He just stands there and plays the shot. Whereas most batters have what they call triggers or pre-movements, and Root's one of those. He has that, kind of rhythmical back and forward. And that, I think, is the problem. If you're somebody who's a rhythm player, I think he's a bowler who messes with your rhythm because he's so unusual and unorthodox. And you mentioned the fact that he's got that hyperextension and he releases the ball a bit further on. Interestingly, I was chatting over dinner with Ravi Shastri the other night, and he said all the India batters are hurried by Bumrah as well in the nets. Even though, they'll face him a lot in the nets, he still hurries them. So picking up the speed of the ball is tough with him. And I've noticed with Stokes, even Stokes actually, who's an excellent player of fast bowling, he's hurried with Bumrah. He struggles to pick up the pace. And a couple of times when he's got him, it's looked as though the ball has kept low, which it has, but he's almost beaten him for pace as well. And I think that's the issue with Bumrah. He kind of hurries people. The one who's played him really well is Crawley, who we'll get onto in a minute. But in terms of the psychology of getting out to a bowler frequently, absolutely. I mean, you said, Root's only got out 8 times to Bumrah. It's not as though it's 19, like me and Glenn McGrath. There comes a point where it gets ridiculous. But the more a bowler bowls at you, the more you get out to him. Obviously, it becomes a psychological issue as much as a mental issue. Every time Root comes in, Rohit throws the ball to Bumrah. He's usually made sure he's got Bumrah fresh for the point Root gets in. And as you say, there's two ways really. He's getting him, particularly because Root comes in when the ball is old, and Bumrah here in India is probably as dangerous, even not more dangerous, with the old ball than the new. So he's usually in when Bumrah's fresh and he's got a ball that's reverse swinging, say, and it's that combination of looking for the LB, which is how he got him in Hyderabad, and then Root tries to get across and plays at a fifth stump line when the ball goes the other way. So,
what about the Pope dismissal? I mean, would you have seen a Yorker like that? I mean, it reminded us of our Wakar Yunis days. As Yorker's gone out the game, reverse swing has gone out the game slightly from our era, but that was a special delivery.
It was spectacular, wasn't it? And it was. Am I remembering rightly? He got. I don't know whether it's Pope or somebody else, just like that at the Oval in that most recent series in England. You kind of know it's coming as a batter because he's going to bowl it. He's one bowler that does unfurl a Yorker reasonably, not frequently, but he uses it. And as you say, it's gone out of the game a little bit. Even though you know it's coming, I don't see what Pope could have done with that. I remember Bob Simpson, who was Lancashire's coach for a while, former Aussie batter, captain, coach. He said to me, "There's no such thing as a Yorker. You shouldn't get beaten by a Yorker. It means that you've misread the length. You should either get to it on the full or take it later and get it on the half volley." But watching that delivery to Pope, I just don't think I don't know what he could have done about it. And obviously, then the way his stumps were just spread eagled, the leg stump flying to where short leg would have been, middle stump knocked backwards, just leaving that one stump standing. It was an unbelievable image as Pope walked back. I don't know. I mean, the Yorkers have gone out the game a little bit, I think, maybe partly because of one-day cricket. The fact that they don't bowl them as much now at the death because batters move around their crease, and the Yorker has slightly lost its potency in one-day cricket. Maybe that means bowlers don't practice it as much and don't use it as much.
No, I think it's because of the two white balls in one-day cricket. A Yorker, when it doesn't reverse swing, I think nowadays the modern batters cope with pretty well, to be honest, and they're down on one knee, scooping it or going back in their crease and moving around the crease. I think what the Bumrah is special about the Bumrah delivery, if that had just been a gun barrel straight Yorker, it might well have done for Pope still, but there is no playing a ball like that reverses that late and is absolutely nailed, by your toes. So it's a combination of the swing and the accuracy and the pace that makes it such a deadly weapon. I think he said today, Jasprit, that he was the first delivery he learned was to bowl his stock ball. And he also learned reverse swing before orthodox swing. It reminds me of people growing up in Pakistan, doesn't it? Or even in the West Indies. They just thought that was normal swing, whereas us in England will be like, oh, that's completely different. It's just how you're brought up. You're a product of your environment.
And it's a little bit different to somebody like Wakar, who, when the ball was reverse swinging, he was basically looking to be in at your toes all the time with the odd ball that held up. So what that meant as a batter is that you could slightly adjust your technique. So if I was facing Wakar, I deliberately try and keep my back lift a bit lower. I wouldn't pick the bat up as much. I'd kind of play late and with the swing, and generally it was mostly coming in with the odd ball holding away. Bumrah's not quite as predictable, I think. That in-swinging Yorker, he uses it sparingly. It's an effort ball, and he gets it right when he does. But he's not always looking for that. So it's not as though you can kind of change your technique because you know exactly what's coming. So he mixes it up. He bowls more of a length, even though it's reversing than perhaps Wasim and Wakar used to when they were going for the toe crushers all the time. He looks a bit of a nightmare to face to me. And, it was probably, I thought it was right that he got the player of the match today. I know Jaiswal's innings, it's more double more than anybody else got in the game. But I thought to get 6 for and 9 in the match on that pitch, which is essentially a batter's pitch, I thought was a standout performance. So I thought it was right he got it.
Also reminded me, actually, I was driving in the car and to the gym. Thanks for I haven't updated you on my gym work. My New Year's resolution is still going, but I thought it was like playing against Pakistan. At the top of the order was the best time to bat. Would you agree with that? Before it starts reversing, before it starts spinning, and the spinners come on. Having said that, Crawley looks like he's in really good rhythm with his game. I was watching him. I think he's slightly loosened. I know they don't worry too much about technique in this team, but he looks like he's slightly loosened up that bottom hand. There's been some more beautiful offside. He's opened up the offside more than I've seen him in previous tours or previous home series. Whether that's him being a bit more relaxed, Rob Key said that when he made his debut, that when he gets tense, he really grips that bottom hand, and that gets in the way of his bat face. I thought he opened up the offside. He looks in pretty good nick. What would you say about his dismissals? Could he be a bit more ruthless or not?
Well, you can always be more ruthless, can't you? I mean, there's rarely an occasion where a batter doesn't think I should have got more. I thought it was a poor shot that he played in the first innings, having played so well. But you always have to temper that with the knowledge that this is you can't just say this is the way we play all the time, but it is the way they play. And if you play such a high risk game, you're going to make some mistakes. That seems to me to be fairly obvious. So you have to offer them leeway as long as they're winning more games than they're losing and winning more series than they're losing. I thought he played brilliantly today, I have to say, in the second innings. I don't know whether you were up at 4 or whether you kind of press record, but right at the start of the day, Bumrah came in for, I think he bowled 5 overs right at the start of the day. He came running and he bowled fast because they obviously realised that even though they had a lot of runs to play with, England were not, you couldn't discount England, and it's still a good pitch. Bumrah came steaming in this morning. He bowled a brilliant spell, and Crawley played fantastically well. He left the ball really well, and I think that goes to your point about being relaxed. He's just more comfortable with his game now. He's improved immeasurably over the last 12 months, got the confidence from that Ashes series that he had. And he just played so well. I mean, when Bumrah hit a length, he just left it. And then when he overpitched, he hit him for beautiful drives down the ground. When he got too straight, which wasn't very often, he clipped him for 4. And he saw off those 5 overs, but without not scoring. He still put pressure on the bowler when they slightly, when they slightly misfired. And I was listening to the commentary a little bit. Ravi was on a lot in that opening half hour and was really praising Zak Crawley. We see a lot of these guys, so it always interests me when you get an outside perspective from somebody who only sees these batters from time to time. And Ravi was so impressed with Crawley. And what happened was, basically, Rohit just pushed the field back this morning. Once Crawley got into his stride, he pushed the field back, and Crawley then just knocked it around and really looked totally untroubled until he finally got out. So he played excellently today. He's had a good test match, 149 runs in both innings, the only England batter to pass 50. And that's where they'll be really disappointed. If you look on this surface, which is about as good a pitch as you'll get in India, I think, at the moment, for only one batter to get past 50 is the area that they'll look at, I think.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing with Bazball, isn't it? When they're playing well, it's like, wow, this is Bazball. When they get out, it's like everyone starts to doubt what they're doing. And the reason I say that is because of Joe Root. And I think we should go on to Joe Root and the shot he played in the second innings, because already the narrative is he doesn't need to play like that. Now, I do buy that a little bit, actually. When you see him being so frenetic, we don't know whether it was his finger injury or whatever. He did look frenetic. He doesn't need to be. He's one of England's, if not England's, greatest ever batter. He'd be one of the top 3. And he gets runs by just accumulating. How often have we looked up in the com box and he's 30 not out without trying to play the big shot? But the narrative is, does he need to play like that in this team? Is it Bazball that's bringing him down? And I've looked at the stats. Before Bazball, he was averaging 49. Since Bazball, he's averaging 53. So it's actually done his game some good. I mean, the reverse sweeps for 6, first ball of an Ashes day. But when it goes wrong, the reverse sweep off Wagner in New Zealand or whatever, everyone then piles on. It's what makes this side so watchable. What do you think about Root? Does he need to play the way he did today? Could he be a bit more calmer and just be old Joe Root?
Well, it was an unusual innings. He came in, I mean, on the back of Pope, really. Pope came in and just got an absolute flyer. England were clearly, that's how they were going to play. They were going to try and hit boundaries early on, get the field back, and maybe then, as Crawley did, accumulate after that. But you needed to start because whilst I said that Rohit had pushed the field back for Crawley, he had the field up for the new guys who were coming in. So Root's innings, he hit a reverse sweep first ball, very first ball for 4. His third ball he reverse swept, but it came off the glove and ballooned over slip. I think he came down and whacked Akshar Patel for 6 over mid off. Had an LB appeal in between, and then got out playing that shot to Ashwin. One thing I do know is that if England are going to do well in this series or win this series, Joe Root needs to have a good series. I mean, if you look back at the times that England have won in India in recent times, test matches that have won, they've done it on the back of people getting big innings. Pope 196 in Hyderabad, Peterson 180 odd in Mumbai in 2012-13. And then Root himself, that game that they won in Chennai when Root got a double hundred, got 213, didn't he? Or what, 200 and something. So, 30s, 40s, 70s don't win test matches in India. Big runs do. Root is the best player. He's the best player of spin. He needs to have a good tour if England are going to win. A bit like you, I feel in the end, you can only judge on the outcome, on the results. And if he keeps getting out as he does today and not getting any runs, then I think the criticism lands fairly. But as you say, so far under Bazball, averaging over 50, doing even better than he had before, England winning many more games that they've lost. You have to show some kind of understanding and give them leeway. Only thing about that shot today is that I can't remember Root playing that run down, hit over mid wicket that often. I'm not sure. Did he try and do it against Lyon at Edgbaston and got stumped in the second innings? Is that how he got out there? I think it was.
Is it because of the bounce?
Ashwin was round the wicket, both the angle and the overspin, and he misread the length, didn't quite get there. But I just don't remember, and I might be mistaken, that being one of Joe's shots. He's got obviously all the shots, so many shots. But in my mind's eye, I can't remember him running down and clonking it over mid wicket with a straight bat that often. So I think he's playing a high risk shot for one of his shots that's not necessarily a strength, if you know what I mean.
Well, his strength is the sweep, and he has a multitude of sweeps. If you remember him in Sri Lanka before he went to Chennai, and then how he batted in Chennai, they could not. A spinner hates being swept. They literally, your point about Bob Simpson and you shouldn't be out to a Yorker. A spinner will bowl their best ball, and if you keep being swept, and then you go fuller and they paddle sweep it, you go a bit shorter, slog sweep, reverse sweep, switch it. He's got every sweep. I'm just wondering with these tall spinners in Akshar Patel and Ashwin and the bounce on these two pitches. He was out sweeping in Hyderabad, I think, a bit of a top edge to 45. Whether the sweep shot he just feels is a bit more risky, so he's now trying down the ground. He will find a way. He will find a way. I think his biggest challenge is Bumrah. I think he'll find a way against spin. He'll find his tempo. He's a Yorkie hungry for runs. He'll want big runs. His biggest challenge will be Bumrah line ahead. What did you think of the veteran, mate? We haven't touched on him. Jimmy, 41 years. We've gone on about Bumrah. How does he keep doing it? How did he bowl, Jimmy? How was Jimmy?
Amazing. Honestly, amazing performance from him. He has to be one of our country's greatest ever sportsmen, doesn't he? I know it's one of these great pub debates, isn't it? Who's the greatest? But Jimmy has to be in the conversation, doesn't he? I mean, it's incredible. He's now nearly 700 wickets. He's 41 years of age. He bowled probably as well as he was bowling 15 years ago in this game. The delivery to get Rohit Sharma so much reminded me of that one to get VVS Latchman at Trent Bridge in 2011, which I think was the first time we really saw him bowl the wobble seam. So he seemed to me to be hitting the pitch and hitting the bat a bit harder here. He looks as fit as a fiddle. Really an incredible performance. So, yeah, I mean, you run out of superlatives for him, really. But
One extreme to the other, from the veteran to the young'un on debut. How did Bashir go?
I thought he did really well. I mean, I think with England spinners, you have to recognise the context that these lads are right at the start of their careers. And of course, it's a test match, and it's not about just giving, letting people learn their trade in Test cricket. But that's where England are with their spinners at the moment. And therefore, for this young kid on the back of just 10 first-class wickets, 6 first-class games, to bowl as he did, holding his nerve, he must have been really nervous to get Rohit Sharma out. They didn't take him apart at any stage. He bowled accurately and intelligently. I thought he did really well. And in fact, I mean, we've touched on England's batting, which I think cost them the game because they didn't get enough runs. But the way Stokes marshalled his resources in the field, the way the spinners bowled, I saw a tweet just comparing the figures, actually. I've got them here. England's spinners, 15 wickets for 500 in the game, an average of 33. India's 9 for 363 at an average of 40. And when you compare where England's spinners are in terms of their age and inexperience compared to India's, that's incredible. So I thought Stokes' captaincy throughout the game was fantastic. The way England came out, even with a first innings deficit on that third morning, the 170 behind, and they still managed to somehow control the game. It's like they were on top in the game. And that all comes down to Stokes' leadership, I think, his belief in his team, his belief in his players, the way that he constantly tinkers around. He doesn't let the game drift and kind of go quiet. So I had the utmost respect for England's performance in the field, their bowlers, Anderson, the young spinners, Stokes' captaincy, and it was the batting really that let them down. But yeah, I thought Bashir did really well.
That's what I was going to say. If you look at the whole Test match, we've been critical in the past of England's sides, and we will be critical in the future. But if you look at the whole Test match, did England bowl India out slightly less than par in that first innings? You'd have to say they did. That score, was below par on such a belter of a pitch, having batted first. Did they bowl them out below par in the second innings? Did they bowl and were captained exceptionally on the second innings yesterday? I thought they were brilliant. Some of the fielding, some of Stokes himself in the deep, Ben Foakes' keeping. I thought that was a special performance yesterday. Did they bat pretty well in the second innings? Yeah, I thought they did. Again, second time round in India, it's never easy. So where was the game lost? Was first innings batting. And again, it just comes down to that spell. And in a game 11 against 11, I thought it highlighted still the individual brilliance in a game of cricket. Never take that away. It was that spell of 6 for 40, or the figures of 6 for 40 odd. That was the difference, and that's why he was rightly player of the match. It was an incredible spell that just bowled England out below par.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way of wrapping this up, really, because given the slight optimism there, and the good points, and there were plenty of them in this game for England, it means that all is not lost. It's an unusual series. This is a massive gap now. England are flying off to Abu Dhabi, as they do, for golf and God knows what, but not much cricket, I suspect. And then they'll come back to Rajkot, which is where the next test is on Feb 15th. There'll be a couple of days of practice before then. But it sets it up beautifully, Nas, with maybe the mouth-watering prospect of one or two big names to come back in. But the series set up, 1-1, everything to play for.
Yeah, what are you hearing out there? Because, India 1-1, but they'll be happy to be 1-1 with no Shami, who I think is ruled out for the series, no Jadeja, no KL Rahul, no Virat Kohli, obviously, historically, even going back further, no Rishabh Pant. So they'll be quite happy going to Rajkot, having got themselves back in the series, and will feel their chances are pretty good. Are you hearing about who will come back, who won't come back? Where are their injury situations?
No, there's not been much chat really. A bit of there was I think a story in the Times of India saying BCCI saying they're just going to give Virat Kohli time and space and very much up to him. I think KL Rahul's going to be fit for the next game. Maybe there was a little bit more doubt about Jadeja. They're obviously key players, and they've got some good players to come back in if they do.
What are your
My
plans?
plan, I am going to Mumbai. A bit boring of me. If I'd have got myself sorted and organised, I'd have done something more interesting, gone up into the mountains, done a bit of fishing or something. But I just didn't get round to it. So I'm going to Mumbai, catch up with a few people there.
What's that pub we like in Mumbai? What's that called?
Well, I'll be in Colaba, which is the nice area up near the gateway of India. I'll go to the Woodmans, which you like, for pizza and a beer. Maybe I'll stock up because Rajkot's a bit dry for the next test, so I might get stuck in Mumbai. Well, I'll have a good week there.
Got one more question for you because you wanted to do, and we may still do it, the greatest Indian 11 that we've ever seen. Not going back to, Sunil Gavaskar or whatever, that we've seen live. We were going to do that. Where would
we
Bumrah?
Will do it.
We will do it, and I've got Bumrah in. Where would he rank in Indian? Because right now Twitter's going mad. Is he the number one? Is he India's greatest ever fast bowler, would you say?
Well, he's the fastest Indian fast bowler to 150 wickets, isn't he? I think I'd have to have him in my team. We'll pick our teams down the line, but I think I'd have to have him in there. Yeah, I mean, he looks a nightmare to face to me. Unorthodox, fast, swings the new ball, swings the old ball both ways. That devastating Yorker. I was rather glad this week to be watching it from the press box about 150 yards away.
Enjoy Mumbai, Michael Atherton.
All right, see you in a few days.